The screen of Taehyung's phone glowed faintly in the darkness of his bedroom. It had been hours since Jungkook's last text, a simple "Are you home?" left unread without an answer. Not because Taehyung didn't see it. Not because he didn't want to reply. But because every word he thought of felt too small for the storm inside his chest. He sat cross-legged on his bed, head damp from a shower he barely remembered taking. The city's night sounds bled in through the slightly open window, car horns, distant laughter, a motorcycle tearing down the street, but they all felt far away. The only thing close, unbearably close, was the memory of Jungkook's voice from earlier. The way he had said Taehyung's name like it was both a plea and a warning. Earlier that evening, when they crossed paths at the cafe, Jungkook hadn't smiled. Not the real smile Taehyung used to see, the one that reached his eyes and made everything else blur. Instead, it was the polite, distant curve of lips he gave strangers. The one that said, "You're not allowed past this line anymore." And yet, his gaze had lingered. Taehyung typed out a message for the 5th time. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I miss you. Can we talk?" Each one was deleted before it could be sent. His chest tightened. He hated this push and pull between wanting to forget and wanting to be remembered. Somewhere across the city, Jungkook was probably lying on his own bed, pretending not to check his phone, pretending Taehyung didn't still occupy too much space in his thoughts. At 2:14 a.m., Taehyung finally set the phone aside, forcing himself to close his eyes. But he didn't notice that just a few minutes later, Jungkook's name lit up his lock screen with a single message: "I saw you today. You looked different." And just like that, the night wasn't quiet anymore. The ride back to Jungkook's apartment felt strangely quiet, not the tense silence from before, but the kind that carried a heavy undercurrent of things unsaid. Taehyung sat beside him, fingers fidgeting with the hem of his coat. Every few seconds, Jungkook's hand would brush his on the gear shift, and Taehyung wasn't sure if it was accidental anymore. When they reached the building, Jungkook was the first to step out, his usual confident stride softened. He waited for Taehyung to follow, and when he did, Jungkook's hand briefly rested on the small of his back, steady, protective, almost claiming. Inside, the apartment was warm, smelling faintly of coffee and the cologne Jungkook always wore. Taehyung placed his bag down, glancing around. Everything was the same as the last time he was here, yet something felt different. "Stay for dinner?" Jungkook said quietly, already loosening his tie. "It's been a long time since we've done that." Taehyung hesitated. "You don't have to, I want to." It was simple, firm, and for the first time in months, Taehyung didn't hear the cold detachment in Jungkook's voice. While Jungkook cooked, Taehyung leaned against a kitchen counter, watching. He didn't know if it was the dim lighting or the way Jungkook's hair fell into his eyes, but everything about him tonight felt like the Jungkook he used to know. The one who would laugh mid-sentence, who would pull Taehyung close just because he could. Halfway through chopping vegetables, Jungkook looked up and caught him staring. His lips curved, not into a smirk, but a soft smile that reached his eyes. Taehyung's breath caught. That smile, it wasn't the look of a man who wanted to hurt him. It was the look of someone who remembered. Someone who still cared. And that scared him more than the coldness ever did. The rain didn't stop that night. It hammered against the windows like it had something to prove, filling the silence between them with a steady, unrelenting rhythm. Taehyung sat on the edge of the couch, his elbows resting on his knees, staring at the untouched mug of tea in front of him. He had made it for Jungkook hours ago, back when he still thought Jungkook would stay to drink it. Jungkook had stayed, but not for the tea. He sat across from Taehyung, leaning back, his black hoodie pulled over his head like a shield. He looked tired, not just from the rain or the day, but from years of something heavier. Taehyung's voice broke first. "Why are you here?" Jungkook's gaze flicked up for the briefest second before returning to the floor. "You called." That's it. Taehyung's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. "You came because I called?" Even after all this time, Jungkook didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pulled his hood back and let the damp strands of his hair fall across his forehead. "Do you really want me to answer that?" The words landed like stones. Taehyung's chest tightened. They both knew the truth. Jungkook would always come when Taehyung called, no matter what had happened between them. That was the one thing that hadn't changed. But admitting it out loud felt dangerous. Taehyung swallowed hard. "You shouldn't still care about me, Jungkook." Jungkook finally looked at him, really looked at him, his eyes dark and unreadable. "And you shouldn't still be wearing the bracelet I gave you." But here we are. The air between them thickened. Neither spoke for a long moment. The storm outside was nothing compared to the one building in Taehyung's chest. And then, without thinking, Taehyung whispered, "I wish I hated you." Jungkook's jaw tightened. "You don't know," Taehyung admitted, his voice trembling. "That's the problem." The storm outside had softened, but inside the apartment, the tension was still a sharp blade, cutting the air between them. Jungkook sat curled on the edge of the couch, his fingers wrapped around the mug of tea Taehyung had placed in front of him an hour ago. The tea had long since gone cold. He hadn't touched it. "You can't keep running from this." Taehyung's voice was deep and firm, but beneath it there was something raw, almost pleading. He stood over Jungkook, his tall frame casting a shadow that felt heavier than the words themselves. "You vanished for days, come back acting like nothing happened, and now you're looking at me like I'm the one who's wrong." Jungkook's eyes flickered up, red-rimmed but defiant. "Because you are wrong, Hyung. And you don't even know what you've done." Taehyung's jaw tightened. "If I don't know, then tell me." Jungkook's lips trembled, but his words were clear. "That night, when you walked away without saying goodbye, without even turning back, I waited. Do you know how humiliating it feels to wait for someone who's already decided they're not coming back? You made me feel small. Like I wasn't worth staying for." Taehyung took a step forward, closing the distance between them until Jungkook had to tilt his head back to meet his gaze. "I didn't leave because I didn't care. No." Jungkook cut in with a shaky laugh, tears brimming. "You left because it was easier than facing me. Because every time I ask you for the truth, you hide. You think loving me means protecting me from everything, but all it's done is break me piece by piece." Silence fell. Taehyung's hand twitched at his side before he finally let it rest on the back of the couch, close enough to cage Jungkook in without touching him. When he spoke again, his voice was low, dangerous. "I'm not leaving this time, Jungkook. But if you want me to stay, you're going to have to stop pretending you don't still want me here." Jungkook's breath caught. He turned his head, blinking back tears. "I never stopped wanting you. That's the problem." And with that, Taehyung stepped back just enough to let him stand, but instead of walking away, Jungkook moved toward the bedroom. The door stayed open. Taehyung followed. The rain had finally stopped, but the world outside still smelled of damp earth and unfinished storms. Inside Jungkook's apartment, the quiet was thick enough to touch, wrapping around them like an unspoken dare. Taehyung stood by the window, his fingers absently tracing the cold glass. He didn't turn when he heard Jungkook's footsteps behind him, didn't flinch when the warmth of his presence settled dangerously close. "Why did you come?" Taehyung's voice was quiet, but it carried weight, like a stone tossed into still water, sending ripples deep into the dark. Jungkook hesitated. "Because I couldn't," he stopped, pressing his lips together as though the truth might burn if spoken too quickly. "I couldn't sleep knowing you were here, hurting." Taehyung gave a faint, humorless laugh. "You've known I was hurting for a long time. You just chose to look away." The words landed like a knife. Jungkook's jaw tightened. "That's not fair." No. Taehyung finally turned, eyes glinting in the dim light. "Then tell me, where were you when I needed you the most?" "When I was." Breaking silence. "The kind that pulls apart ribs and squeezes the air out." Jungkook stepped forward, close enough that Taehyung could feel the heat radiating from him. His voice dropped. "I was breaking too." That confession, raw and almost desperate, hung between them. Taehyung's chest rose and fell unevenly, his fingers curling into fists to stop himself from shaking. "Then why does it still feel like I was the only one bleeding?" Something in Jungkook's gaze shifted, like a storm changing direction. He reached out slowly, almost afraid Taehyung would vanish if he moved too fast. His fingertips grazed Taehyung's wrist, a fragile contact that carried the weight of years. "Because," Jungkook said softly, "I didn't know how to love you without losing myself. And now, I think I'm ready to lose whatever it takes." Taehyung's breath hitched. The ache between them wasn't gone, it had only deepened, but for the first time in years, the silence between them wasn't empty. It was waiting.